This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
Next on the 5 o'clock report.
I skipped through some of the parts.
He chose to omit the parts that contradict the president.
I work around this room to try to fix problems.
I refuse to punish and make our nation less secure.
The SAVE Act is not a voter ID bill.
Now, let's go to the newsroom.
The homeland under threat. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Webster. The Trump administration's top domestic security heads before a Senate Select Committee today to brief lawmakers on the elevated threats against the U.S. mainland amid a Middle East war and related concerns about that triggering more terror attacks here. And tempers flared at that session over the cost and the necessity of war.
Time was running long, and I skipped through some of the portions of my oral delivered remarks.
He chose to omit the parts that contradict the president.
Tulsi Gabbard questioned by Virginia Democrat Mark Warner. Another hearing today on confirming Senator Markwayne Mullin to replace Kristi Noem as head of Homeland Security. Rand Paul went head-to-head with Mullin on that one, and not for the first time. Mullin called Paul a snake in the grass several years ago. Today, Paul asked why Americans should trust someone who he says has anger management issues. Mullin's answer:
As far as my terms as snake in the grass, sir, I work around this room to try to fix problems. I've worked with many people in this room. It seems like you fight Republicans more than you work with us.
Many Democrat questions centered on immigration enforcement reform, an issue that's holding up DHS funding right now. Pennsylvania Democrat John Fetterman told the hearing he wants to see ICE reforms as much as others in his party do, but not by gutting the DHS budget.
The difference is I refuse to punish and make our nation less secure part of that. So for me, I came here and I committed to come here with an open mind, and I'm going to continue to do that.
Despite some resistance, Mullin is expected to win confirmation. However, it's unclear when Democrats and Republicans might ever reach a compromise on ICE reform that would free up that DHS funding. And air travelers are increasingly caught in the middle of that debate, as are TSA workers who aren't getting paychecks. How bad could things get? NBC's Maggie Vespa.
The TSA's acting deputy administrator dropping a grim prediction saying, quote, it's not hyperbole to think that soon entire airports could start closing if nothing changes. He didn't say which airport specifically or when this might happen, but again, it's just one more sign as to how serious this is getting.
With long TSA lines now becoming the norm, travelers like these folks at Newark Liberty this morning showed up plenty early.
Just because a couple of my friends and I saw on TikTok of like the news and everything being like the TSA lines being like 3 hours, 4 hours long, so we just want to be super prepared.
It definitely had an impact on how early I got here because I was not about to wait 3 hours.
Today, 3 TSA checkpoints at Philadelphia International temporarily closed down due to short staffing. Back to the Senate now, where debate also continues on the Republican-backed SAVE Act, looking to make voter ID the law of the land, but not if Democrats can help it.
Let me be very clear. The SAVE Act is not a voter ID bill. It is in every sense a voter suppression bill.
Minority Leader Chuck Schumer of New York. Majority Leader John Thune tells Fox News passage is an uphill battle.
We've got an opportunity over the course of the next few days and perhaps into next week to litigate the issue, to have the debate on the floor, and to put Democrats on defense and on the record on whether or not they think it ought to be just American citizens who vote in American elections.
Thune says the SAVE Act debate could stretch into next week. An update on the war in the Middle East, day 19 it is. U.S. military action on multiple areas, including the Iranian coastline with the Strait of Hormuz.
U.S. Central Command announced it dropped multiple 5,000-pound deep penetrator munitions, bunker busters, on hardened missile sites along Iran's coastline near the Strait of Hormuz, saying the weapons posed a risk to the vital oil shipping corridor.
That's Richard Engel. Next, some economic news. As expected, interest rates left unchanged today by the Federal Reserve. Second time in a row they've done that. The rate influences the rate we pay on interest for mortgages and credit cards. Fed Chair Jerome Powell warning there won't be another rate cut until the board sees progress on inflation, adding that rising oil prices from the Middle East war add a layer of concern to that. Some faith news for you now. The Liberty Council just argued a landmark religious freedom case before the U.S. Court of Appeals. At issue are employees held to doctrinal statements at faith-based organizations.
We don't have that freedom, which is the fundamental freedom that birthed America 250 years ago.
then we have no freedom at all.
Liberty Counsel founder and chairman Matt Staver, who represented Liberty University, which was sued by a former employee that had begun taking female hormones, against the agreement he signed when he was hired. Staver says it could have implications for every faith-based organization.
Say mother and father, they want to send their child to Liberty University, and they look at the doctrinal statement. I want to send my daughter to that university that has these specific Christian values. But then when they actually come to campus, employees are running around with the LGBTQ pride flag. They've got pro-abortion on their T-shirts. That would be a hypocritical situation. I'm not going to send my kid here. What this means is that you can have your faith in print, but you can't actually exercise it.
That case heard on Tuesday. We're still waiting for a decision. Still to come here on the 5 o'clock report, a recap of our top regional stories and highlights from today's Real Answers.
I'm Kevin Williams, and here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. Here's our call for tonight. It'll turn cloudy where it has not yet done so. It'll be cold, but not as cold as last night. Low temperatures 20s for most. There'll be a touch of light snow or flurries for some late tonight or tomorrow morning. Otherwise, a good deal of cloud cover tomorrow. High temps, upper 30s and 40s. Friday, cloudy with afternoon rain and showers. High temps Friday in the 40s to near 50 degrees.
Thank you, Kevin. Now checking the stories making news where you live across New York and Pennsylvania. Private funeral services held this morning for Corporal Timothy O'Connor Jr., a Pennsylvania state trooper killed in a traffic stop last week. The 40-year-old was shot in West Colne Township after he pulled over an erratic driver that later took his own life. O'Connor leaves behind a wife and young daughter. The officer honored by his community at a service at St. Joseph Parish in Downingtown.
Today we regretfully come here to commend an officer who, in stepping into that uncertainty, experienced the worst case scenario. He gave his life out of love, out of service, and protection of his community.
Following his death, Governor Josh Shapiro ordered all flags in Pennsylvania to be flown at half staff. A new report shows PA is one of the states hardest hit when it comes to the cost of gas and electric. Data from the Joint Economic Committee in Washington shows the cost of electricity up over 12% in the Keystone State in the past year. The average PA resident spending $210 more a year. Majority Chair of the Pennsylvania House Energy Committee, Elizabeth Fielder, telling WHTM the state is not producing enough of its own energy to keep up with demand.
Utilities keep going up, and that does not sit well with me. That's not a jab at any one person or any one business, but I do think it's the reality we face right now.
Pennsylvania is part of the PMJ grid, which serves the Mid-Atlantic and Midwest states. Governor Shapiro's been a vocal critic of PMJ, saying its delays in approving new energy sources are driving up the costs. Knives and contraband dropped inside of a secure fence at an upstate New York prison facility over the weekend using a drone. Here's Family Life's Sarah Harnish.
Yeah, and now New York State Department of Correction officials are calling on the need for lawmakers to pass legislation that restricts drone activity near prisons. Inside that package at Marcy Correctional Facility, 2 8-inch double-edged knives, 530 grams of a green leafy substance, and a cell phone. Staff detected a drone flying overhead that released the drop between dormitory buildings at 1 a.m. Saturday. The prison system calls drones a growing threat. Sarah Harnish, Family Life News.
All right, thank you very much, Sarah. Finally back to Pennsylvania, where Altoona-based gas station chain Sheetz is planning a massive hiring event across the state. They're looking for 1,500 employees nationwide, 500 of which need to be in the Keystone State. Sheetz is ranked second now in the most recent best workplaces in retail. The company will host on-the-spot interviews at each of its 315 locations across the Commonwealth on Wednesday, a week from today. Up next, highlights from today's edition of Real Answers. While it's still technically winter until Friday, licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson says now is the time to begin giving serious thought to how your kids will spend their school summer vacation and the importance of not letting them just veg out in front of video screens, but instead being intentional about their schedule. I guess one big key here of many is making sure that summer is, more about sunscreen than electronic screens.
That's a good way to put it, yes. Sunscreen is a very good screen to engage your children in. We're talking about this topic, and I kind of hesitated at first since it is pretty early, but the reality is this is one of those things that if we don't really give it some thought and think about how we're going to prepare for that time when our children are home during the summer, then we might not actually do it, and then we'll just be flying kind of on a whim and a fancy fancy, really, but this is something to really give thought to. Again, with the increasing emphasis on reducing screen time, especially from our children, then this is now the time to start thinking about, well, what can you do with your children and help keep them involved mentally in their day, not just blindly and mindlessly staring at a screen. And the two areas that we're going to discuss today, again, are what are some things you can get your children to do, as well as the importance of having a consistent schedule with your children and the benefits of that.
Yeah, with all the things that our kids face these days, I think back to, when we're kids, a lot of parents would just kind of seed the summer. School's out, okay, go out, play. There wasn't really planning, very limited planning into what kids were going to be doing that summer. But these days, I think you really have to be intentional.
Absolutely. And of course, back when we were growing up, Mark, we didn't have excessive screen times. We did have a television. And if you had the 13 channels of cable TV back then, you could still spend too much time in front of it. But nowadays, again, with social media and now AI and constant bombardment by not just advertisements, but by strangers, really, through social media platforms. It's, of course, as you were saying, it's more important than ever now to be very vigilant about that.
All right, well, let's dive in a little deeper. You mentioned a couple of key points here that parents probably would be wise to keep in mind as they look ahead to summer. What are some of those?
Well, the first thing is to have your children on a schedule. I think it's a fantastic idea as parents to have some sort of a daily devotional time with your children in the mornings, but then also take the time to plan out at some point during the day, when would it be a good time for your children to engage in some sort of a learning activity? A couple things that come to mind. There are lots of activities that are self-directed. In other words, like here at our house, my family, we call them the yellow box activities. And there are several shoebox-sized hard plastic containers with a yellow lid on them. And inside each container, there's a different activity. And we can tell our boys, it's time to go grab a yellow box, go ahead and choose a yellow box and engage in that activity. And that gives the parents time, if needed, to do other things around the house. For me, it's cleaning up the kitchen a lot of times or cleaning up after the kids. Yeah, they're not plopped in front of the TV. They're still engaging in an activity that they can be stimulating themselves mentally. And whether that's a hands-on skill, such as a puzzle or coloring books or doing some other kind of an art project. Or it can be something else, like playing a game. I mean, we've got this really cool magnet game that they have to play, but they can do it independently. So those are some things that you can be thinking about now. Like, do you have some of these activities that you can then engage your children in the summertime during quote unquote yellow box time? And again, that allows them to stay stimulated and also allows you to turn off the screen.
Highlights from today's edition of Real Answers. You can hear the entire feature and all of our Family Life original news features at Apple Podcast, YouTube, Spotify, and of course, FamilyLife.org. This is the 5 o'clock report on Family Life.
A financial warning light is blinking for many households. Hi, I'm Rob West with a Faith and Finance Minute. More families than ever are turning to credit cards to cover everyday expenses. But let's be honest, if you need credit just to get by, the ends aren't meeting. That's the issue. Using a credit card to fill the gap between income and spending might feel convenient, but it can quickly make matters worse. Borrowing today only increases pressure tomorrow as higher balances and interest charges compound. If you're leaning on credit more often, take time to evaluate your budget line by line. Look for places to trim expenses and renegotiate bills. Cutting back isn't fun, but it's far better than sliding deeper into debt, and it puts you on the path toward financial freedom. Discover the best Christian financial articles, podcasts, and videos by visiting our website, faithfi.com, or by downloading FaithFi, Faith and Finance from your app store.
Still to come here on the 5 o'clock report. Maybe they were on the menu at school today or for dinner tonight. We're dishing on Sloppy Joes after weather with Kevin.
I'm Kevin Williams, and here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. Well, after a spell of wintry weather, a little break from the bitter cold is ahead these next couple days. However, that said, clouds will be building, and ultimately a little precip, mainly rain, will be in the offing. Here's our call for tonight. It'll turn cloudy where it has not yet done so. It'll be cold, but not as cold as last night. Low temperatures 20s for most. There'll be a touch of light snow or flurries for some late tonight or tomorrow morning. Otherwise, a good deal of cloud cover tomorrow. High temps, upper 30s and 40s. Friday cloudy with afternoon rain and showers. High temps Friday in the 40s to near 50 degrees.
All right, Kevin, thank you very much. And finally at 5.
Sloppy Joes.
That's a clip from 1995's Billy Madison with Adam Sandler, one a lot of kids can probably relate to. Sloppy Joes have been a mainstay in school cafeterias and kitchens for decades. On this National Sloppy Joe Day, we couldn't help but wonder, though, who is this Joe and why is he so messy? Sadly, no definitive answer. Sloppy Joes have been around for close to 100 years, and there seem to be almost as many claims to who invented them. From a bartender named Jose in 1920s Havana, Cuba, to another barkeep named Joe in Key West, Florida, frequented by Hemingway, to a Sioux City, Iowa cook named, you guessed it, Joe. In any event, the sloppy sandwich really caught on in the 1960s when Hunt's introduced their Manwich sauce for beefing up ground beef. Other names for a sloppy Joe over the years include Yum Yum, Slush Burger, and Dynamite. Make of that what you will. A sloppy ending to the world we live in for Wednesday, March 18th, 2026. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Mark Webster, Family Life News.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.